Hi, my name's Leighton Jin. I'm the Director of Development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, also known as AmDocs, which is March 21st to 25th at the Palm Springs Cultural Center. Today, we have a great film as part of a brand new series. We have Phillip Large, whose film Women in Aviation will make its debut. And can you talk about the film and how you guys decided to have this to launch your new series?
Sure, sure. Every year we have a gala. The gala generates a video of its own. This particular gala from 2023 was Women in Aviation, but uh, we started looking at it differently. We thought there's always a bigger story maybe that we could tell instead of something that's like 10 to 15 minutes long. So this was actually our second documentary for a full-length feature, and we sought out personally women that were, I would call, trailblazers, women that have made progress and have advanced the women's movement. All of them are aviators and engineers, very famous people. So it was a pleasure to be able to talk to each of them. Uh, Aviation, as you know, or if you don't, is very dominated by men. It's really very recent that women have had the strides that they've had, and a lot of it is due to uh, things that these women that we spoke to and women in aviation have done. If you look back, like Sally Ride was the first woman that was an American astronaut, but that was just in 1983. So it's really an uphill battle, so to speak, but it's very encouraging. And at the end of it, the overall takeaway is you can't be what you can't dream. That was the last line that I think I gave the host to Gail O'Grady, and it pretty much sums up the whole idea of the documentary itself.
You know, I've had the chance. I'm a former sports writer. I worked across the Air Museum at the Desert Sun, and I cover tennis. And your last quote reminds me of a quote I used from Billie Jean King that if you can see it, you can be it. So
There you
that
go.
seems very familiar. And obviously, she's another female trailblazer in another industry. Um, what are some of the stories that are in your film that maybe people don't know about, but probably should know about?
Well, I could talk about some of the leads that I was able to interview. There's many, many that went into this.
Mhm.
Um, Ellen Ochoa is the first Latina in space. She also went
Nice.
on to become the head of the Johnson Space Center. So she was an incredible interview. Um, if you look at her history, she has 5 schools named after her. So it's quite an achievement to be able to talk to somebody on that level. Eileen Collins was the first commander of a space shuttle mission and was recognized by the White House. And so she was a really great interview as well. We talked to people like Erin Miller. Erin Miller, her grandmother flew planes in World War II, but none of
Wow.
the women that died after that were allowed to be buried in Arlington or other national cemeteries. So she fought for a bill that passed in Congress, and she was the one that made it happen, that got her grandmother into Arlington. And now women at all national cemeteries can be admitted uh, once they've had their aviation careers. Um, Vicky Benzing is the fastest woman air racer. She's out there competing. She won the Reno air race several times.
Wow.
Um, Captain Elizabeth Somerville is the head of the Navy Test Wing Atlantic. So she's over several thousand people and is a female captain. Um, One of the stories that I like probably about many of them was the interview with Tammy Jo Schultz. Tammy Jo tried to become a pilot all her life and had a really hard time. So she went into pre med and she kept thinking, one day I'll be a pilot. And then she got turned down by the Army and the Air Force. And finally, she got in with the Navy. The Navy gave her a chance, and it took her 2 years before they finally recruited her. But she became an F-18 Super Hornet pilot, one of the very first women to ever be that. Um, what's interesting with her story is she flew for 8 years and she kind of focused on the what ifs. So she trained other pilots, like if you lose an engine or if something else happens that's really dramatic, how do you save yourself in the plane?
Okay.
She was there 8 years and then she went to work for Southwest. And of all things, at Southwest, at about 30,000 feet, she lost an engine and it blew through the plane and it took part of the wing off and it busted a window and actually sucked somebody out. And she used that background of her career to be able to get the plane under control that was falling at 6,000 miles an hour a minute and turning 40 degrees at the same time and sliding. She was able to get it back on track and land and save all the rest of the people on the plane. So
Wow.
interesting first and a great story to be able to tell on her behalf.
I don't know how you squeeze all this in. These are all remarkable stories.
Well, that's the fact that I've been doing work with the Air Museum, the Palm Springs Air Museum, for 10 years,
Hmm.
and I've been interviewing vets and current enlisted men and women all that
Hmm.
time. And we kept thinking, how could we possibly bring all of this footage, all this library that we have in equity to the benefit of the Air Museum, but also to the benefit of people in general, especially with women in aviation, being able to show young girls and women of all ages actually that there is a career for you out there in aviation and engineering. So once we sat down and came up with the bigger idea of maybe we need to be our own banner, and so we created Palm Springs Air Museum Productions, and that's where Women in Aviation became our first documentary under that banner.
I mean, it seems like it could be not just a documentary, but a documentary series. You have a wealth of interesting topics. I mean,
Yes,
there's
it's a pleasure to be able to tell it. Um, our first documentary before that was the 25th silver anniversary of the Air Museum. So it was a very formatted thing that was a great story to tell. We hosted it by Joe Mantegna, the actor, and
oh
started a great relationship with Joe. And Joe helped us and Danny, his agent, to find Gail O'Grady, who ended up being the host of Women in Aviation,
yeah.
um, in our next documentary, which I'll talk about later. But we,
Oh,
yeah,
what a tease.
yeah. Well, it seems like you get to the end of one. I think Women in Aviation ended in February of 2023, and then
Mhm.
it went out in the festival circuit and some other places, but it's never had a theatrical debut. So AmDocs is our theatrical debut, and then 2 months later, I'm working on the next one.
Oh
So,
wow.
and we just finished the next one, but we'll talk about that later.
As far as distribution, have you guys started looking at the streaming services already, or what's the other plans for this? Because this is you got a gold mine of a lot of great stories. It seems like that would play well.
um, we've done some work with PBS Regional, and
Mhm.
PBS has been a great partner with us. They also aired the previous documentary on our 25th anniversary. We've looked into distribution, and one of the things that I'm actually looking at with the next documentary as well is how I might be able to connect that at AmDoc, where I meet up with people that are interested in this format and see what its possibilities are. One of the things that I'm, I guess, ignorant to is that once you lock it up into a cable run and then it comes out of your control for a long, long time, like
Mm.
some of the stuff that we're talking about is timely. In the case of Women in Aviation, that's a little more evergreen. The next documentary is very timely. So if you
Mhm.
lock it up, it's already technologies maybe move past it by the time you get it back to do what you
Mhm.
want with it. So we're lucky in that all the productions that we do are raised by donation, and they're
Mhm.
paid for through the gala, like I spoke of, and other venues that they do. And we've been very lucky by that. I'm hoping that we do one every year is the goal,
Mhm.
um, depending on what the topics are, but that's the goal. And they help feed our education programs at the Air Museum.
Mhm.
The, for instance, Women in Aviation became a study guide for kids in school. And you can watch the documentary, and the teacher can work along with the students with the study guide, and it creates a backward and forth educational experience for them. So it really turned out quite well that way.
That's really fantastic. That's such a great opportunity for kids. Now, I wish I was a kid so I could experience this
I know, I
and
was
try
thinking
and
the
be.
same thing back in the day.
Yeah, we might have had a different career trajectory if I had an opportunity like this. Um, now, really quick, I'm not great with dates, but when is the gala? And uh, well, I'll get the information. We'll post this on the bottom of this of the description, just in case people want to come by and go to the gala and see some of your work, as well as donate to you to help you make these other features.
The galas every year actually was just last week.
Oh,
So they're usually in February.
okay.
The gala that was last week is the new documentaries theme.
Hmm.
So the Women in Aviation one would have been in February of 2023.
Hmm.
So you get the donations from there and you work forward to be able to work on these things. They take um, a lot of commitment, let's put it that way,
Yeah.
because especially with like women in aviation, you're dealing with people that you don't just pick up the phone and go, "Hey, it's Philip, what you doing?" Like they're doing nothing. Most of the people that I talk to had publishing and books already that they're out with, and or tours and lectures that circuits. Or if you're talking to somebody like the commander on a Navy base, you can't just pick up the phone and go, "Hey, what are you doing?" So they take a lot of coordination. Women in Aviation took 9 months to produce and to have it come out. I know in the world of maybe theatrical documentaries, that's not a lot, but it does seem like you're giving birth sometimes. At the end of 9 months, you're like, "Oh my God."
But I mean, a lot of the interviews and all the information collected was over the years too. So I'm sure it took a little bit more than 9 months because of all the work you've done with the museum over
Right,
the years, correct?
right. There's a lot to pull together. I think that part of it is when I sat with Fred Bell's the vice chairman of the museum. He's the producer of all the documentaries. He's the
Hmm.
person that goes out and helps find these women, and then in this particular case, women in aviation, speak to them about the goals of what we're trying to do, but how it fits into the education program and all the reasoning behind it.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember sitting with Fred at one of the galas, and we were watching the videos before they played that night. He said, "Gosh, Philip, I think that you've really come around in the last 3 years. These are like some of the best work ever." And I'm sitting there thinking, "What about the last seven before it?" But okay, I'll take that as a compliment. So they take a very specific, not just understanding the technical terms, the planes and the pilots and all of their backgrounds, but you're also telling history, factual history. So you have to be really, really accurate. And I think I pride myself on that, that I do my research very due diligent. And uh, I think after those 3 years that he spoke about, that I'm pretty much an expert in this particular genre right now of
Hmm.
military type aviation documentaries.
Now, how much can you talk about the one that you guys just premiered at the last gala?
A lot actually, because it's getting ready to roll out. I don't have its media plan yet. I think that they'll probably do the festival circuit with it,
Hmm.
but this particular one's called Stealth to Six, Shaping the Next Generation.
Oh,
So I interviewed seven F-117 stealth pilots. They were all the original pilots that flew in Desert Storm, and
oh.
then were the first wave of pilots that went out that night, not knowing if they'd come back. So it was a really interesting thing that I interviewed each one of them individually, but together they told a very unique story, one that they haven't been seen each other for maybe 10, 15 years.
Ooh.
And it was interesting that all of them lived the same uh, terrifying night that night, but also all of them came back safely. And so they had really great stories to tell. we talked to uh, like Michael Rich. Michael Rich is Ben Rich's son. Ben Rich was the person that started Skunkworks and
Oh,
created the SR-71 and the F-117. So talking to his son was really interesting to find like different quirky things about his father. Um, and what the stealth to six means is that we talked to people about the F-22 Raptor, which is a fourth generation plane, and the
mm,
F-35, which is a fifth generation plane. And then the finale of it is we talked to John Clark, who's the vice president of Skunkworks now, and what the future is holding for aviation in the sixth generation platform that nobody is able to even see yet. What's kind of neat when you get to that level and you're talking to somebody and he's revealing some things that have never been seen before is it
mm,
opened a door with us with Skunkworks and Lockheed so
yeah.
that we were able to work with them directly. And so this documentary has footage and things that you've never seen before that have only been behind the doors of Lockheed that
Mm.
them as our partner came in and we were able to use and highlight. So it's a really interesting documentary. You learn a whole lot from it, but it's super entertaining because it's covered wall to wall with stuff that you're just in awe of. So it's pretty cool.
Man, you guys have a wealth of information. You guys really are going to be a major studio here. It sounds like.
Well, when you talk about stealth stuff, we own a stealth bomber here at the Palm
Mhm.
Springs Air Museum. Um, Actually, I should back up. That documentary, this new one, is hosted by DB Sweeney, who's an actor.
Oh,
He was
cool.
in Memphis Belle,
Mhm.
and we own Memphis Belle. So it was just coincidence that we own the movie plane, Memphis Belle, and he was in that plane. So when we hired him, it wasn't the idea. It was just, oh my God. So that documentary opens with him talking about the past, walking in front of Memphis Belle. So and then we flash forward into the future, and we have our own F-117. So it's pretty cool that way.
That's amazing, man. You guys got something special brewing over there. It's really exciting.
Thank you,
Uh,
thank you.
can you talk to me a little bit about your career? Because I know you do a lot of stuff as far as marketing and creatives. Can you talk to me about your career and how you decided to get into doing documentaries? Because you've done
Sure.
others before this, correct?
Yes, yes. Well, actually, this is the one we just finished with Stealth is my third documentary.
Hmm.
Before that, I've mostly been in the world of advertising and marketing.
Hmm.
So I started way back as an editor. Um, Actually, if you want to go farther back, it's even weirder and funnier. So
Okay.
I moved from Texas
Hmm.
and decided that I was going to be a sound engineer in Los Angeles, right? With
Okay.
all the wide-eyed starry things, I'm going to do that. And for some reason, my backup plan, which I still think is hilarious, I don't know why, was if I didn't end up as a sound engineer, then I would move to San Diego and work at the zoo. So I have no idea why plan B was the zoo, but I was young. Anyway, so I decided I got to do something because I'm not getting these job opportunities. I couldn't find anything in sound engineering. So I went to USC Extension and took an editing course. And I only got through like 3 weeks of it. And I saw a job board for a film editor at Republic Pictures. So I quit that and then went to Republic Pictures, got hired. And this will really date myself, but back in the day, syndicated shows used to be on film and they
Mm.
would be projected at television stations. That's how you saw them. There was no tape. And so
Oh.
I worked on Bonanza and Get Smart. Those were my two that they would come back from television stations and I would splice commercials and repair them. But
Oh.
the thing, long story long, that just ended up working about timing, which I think most of my life has been about timing, is they owned It's a Wonderful Life and all of the John Wayne movies. So they
Oh.
hired me to master It's a Wonderful Life and all the John Wayne movies for a new format called VHS. So that opened a door for me to finally be an editor. And I started on a syndicated show was owned by Telepictures at the time,
Hmm.
and Telepictures merged with Lorimar, and then became a vice president of marketing at Lorimar, and then
Wow.
Lorimar merged with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers were merged with Time, and by then I was tired of mergers, so I started my own production company called Another Large Production,
Mhm.
and we had that company for 15 years and worked with every studio in the business. We launched over 21 channels of MTV. We
Whoa.
did all the syndicated shows like Martha Stewart and Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Oprah.
Wow.
We worked on all those things. And then I decided after that 15 years, I'm going to retire. So we moved to Palm Springs, my husband and myself, and we decided this is it. And about 5 months later, I got a job at the Jones Agency, which is our local agency. And I've been there now 18 years. Their head of video and production. And the Jones Agency owns the Palm Springs Air Museum account. And so that's how I was finally introduced to working with the Palm Springs Air Museum. Long story long, like I said. But I've had a really great career. I love that the desert supports people in their like second chances and second win or whatever they want to do.
Hmm.
Honestly, I think the last 3 years, not to quote Fred, but the last 3 years of my career have been the best. And that seems to be from working in the documentary world.
Hmm.
Um, I've always been kind of that storyteller, but most of it's in a 30-second format or
Hmm.
a promo or a commercial.
Hmm.
Out here, I do all the advertising for the Palm Springs Aerial Tramway,
Oh.
as well as the Air Museum and several other clients. So I've always been in that world. But once you were able to break that and start being able to long form discuss something with somebody, it really started clicking for me. And I think documentaries is where I'll stay for a while. I'll turn 65 in October, God help me.
Oh no.
Uh,
Well, you look great. I thought you were younger than
Thanks.
that.
Yeah, I'm not really thinking I'm retiring yet, but please don't quote me here.
Well, you said you were retiring 18 years ago, so I don't know if you really understand the term retirement.
It seems to be that way. I think all of my friends out here are retired and retired young. And they'll
Mhm.
ask, what are you doing? And I'm saying, well, I'm on documentary number 3 this weekend. So I'll see you in a few months.
Now, do you ever entertain the idea of breaking away and doing a documentary outside of the Air Museum, or?
Yes, actually, my partner and I are discussing the possibility of doing something like that in my downtime. He's retired, but I'm thinking that the next one, if we do go forward with it, we've started an outline now, is politically based. So it's
Oh.
nothing to do with military or air. I'll keep it at
Mhm.
that because I don't want to go much too farther into it yet.
Sure.
But yes, we are beginning some conversations about doing something other than my museum work right now.
Now, you earlier talking a little bit about your career, and the thing that struck me was a lot of those were Merv Griffin productions, correct?
Yes, several of them were. Some are Sony and some are Paramount. And we literally had, including 20 Warner Brothers that I had worked at, we ended up with every studio for a long time there. I had about 30 employees and 10 edit bays and a sound stage, and it was quite a big deal. Yeah, it was like 30,000 square feet in Los Angeles, which was crazy. That's why
Wow.
it's a completely different world now, though, which is refreshing. Where you, this is my edit bay, at home. It's funny. I used to watch during the pandemic the reporters on television filming from their living rooms, and I thought all I could do was like pick out what's in the background instead of paying attention. So that's why the wallpaper. I had to do something to make me more interesting. Anyway.
I just remember a reporter was doing one of his live remotes, and his mistress walked by in the background
Oh, there you go.
with his wife watching.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, there's been some interesting Zoom calls, but it's all good.
How much has technology made it possible for you to do a lot of this? Because like you said, you had top of the line equipment And now when you're working here, it seems much more streamlined because of the technology and how accessible it is. How much has that changed you and your work process?
Very much. In fact, it changes all the time. It's never stopping. I've always been an editor, so I think I have 30 plus years as an editor,
Wow.
and even that evolves and evolves, through whatever your tools are that you're using. I think one of the best parts of technology evolving is making it affordable for you to do different things and to put your neck out there and risk different things where it used to cost a fortune to be able to do a 30-second commercial. Now you can film a full-length documentary under that same budget if you just know how to put together the right pieces. And
Hmm.
for me, I'm kind of a one-man band. I mean, I work with really great people like Fred and Joe and Danny and all of them that are producing with me. But
Hmm.
I edit, direct, mix, and color every production that I do myself, and I
Wow.
enjoy it. And I think that that opens up a lot of new doors for you, things that you maybe wouldn't have thought of doing. Kind of like the
Hmm.
women in aviation theme, like some of the stuff you're like, how did they just say, I'm going to do that and then do it? Well, the technology kind of helps you do that now. It
Hmm.
opens up a lot of new doors for you. So it works well for me here at home.
And you being a veteran editor for so many years, we have a lot of filmmakers coming out to this festival. What kind of advice would you give them who's starting out and they're kind of like what you're doing right now, one man band? And what advice do you give them as an editor? Well, any kind of advice.
Um, I think sharing your work is important because getting different people's opinions and listening to what they have to say with it works really well. Not being afraid to do that. I know it's uniquely your own vision, like everything in life when you're doing this kind of work, anything creative. But I enjoy working with people and not being in a vacuum. So it's even though you're working sometimes long, laborious hours here at home all by yourself or the dog, but you know, involving people in what you're doing is really a key to becoming a better editor, I think.
Hmm.
Um, Listening for feedback and taking it well and trying to figure out how to bring that in there. Also being incredibly organized for the kind of work that I do. Um, you can have 300 to 500 sources to make a single documentary and over 3,000 edits in it, just to pull it off. So you have to be incredibly, incredibly organized from the very beginning. I think that that's one of the biggest compliments that people say about me is that as a editor, I'm also a producer and
Hmm.
I understand the final product and how we're going to get there so I can communicate that well. And seems to be one of my best parts, I guess.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time talking with me today. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited for what you guys are doing at the Air Museum. I've told people I'm a former journalist and I worked across the street from the Air Museum for many, many years. So it's a great museum for our filmmakers coming out of town. If you have some time, check out the Air Museum. It's a real treasure here in the desert. And Philip is doing some great work to kind of just enhance it and just get into the history of aviation. I think it's going to be a real treat for a lot of people. Um,
Thank you
Anything else you'd like to add?
very much. No, I just want to say thank you so much for including us in AmDoc this year. Um, it will be our theatrical debut. We're on the last day on a Monday, but we plan on packing the house, and it's going to be great to see it up on a big screen. Something I've never done in my life. So it really is a pleasure. And on behalf of Fred Bell at the Air Museum and myself, we thank you guys very, very much.
Well, we thank you guys too. This is a wonderful community and we want to support each other. So thank you very much, Philip. Appreciate it.
Thank
A
you.
reminder, our film festival is March 21st to 25th at the Palm Springs Cultural Center inside the Camelot Theater. Tickets are going fast. Opening night guest is Sean Penn. And Monday we have Women in Aviation. Let's not forget about that. So thank you again very much. And we'll see you guys all at the film festival.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
All right.